ਸਤਿਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਪ੍ਰਗਟਿਆ, ਮਿਟੀ ਮਿਟੀ ਧੁੰਦ ਜਗ ਚਾਨਣ ਹੋਆ, ਚਾਨਣ ਜਿਉ ਕਰ ਸੂਰਜ, ਜਿਉ ਕਰ ਸੂਰਜ ਨਿਕਲਿਆ, ਤਾਰੇ ਛਪੇ ਅੰਧੇਰ ਪਲੋਆ, ਮੈਂ ਮੂਰਖ ਕੀ ਕੇ ਤੱਕ ਬਾਤ ਹੈ, ਮੈਂ ਮੂਰਖ ਕੀ ਕੇ ਤੱਕ ਬਾਤ ਹੈ, ਕੋਟ ਪਿਆਰੀ ਕੋਟ ਪਿਆਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਜਿਨ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਸੇ ਫਿਰ ਬਰਦਾਸ ਨਾ ਕਰਿਆ, ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਜਿਨ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਸੇ ਫਿਰ ਬਰਦਾਸ ਨਾ ਕਰਿਆ। कोट ब्रह्मंड को ठाकुर स्वामी, सर्व जिया का दाता रे। कोट ब्रह्मंड को ठाकुर स्वामी, सर्व जिया का दाता रे। प्रतिपाले नित सार समारे, एक गुण नहीं मूर्ख जाता रे, एक गुण नहीं मूर्ख जाता रे, एक गुण नहीं मूर्ख जाता। गुरु नानक जिन सुनिया से फिर अरदास ना करिया, गुरु नानक जिन सुनिया से फिर अरदास ना करिया। मैं मूर्ख की के तक बात है, मैं मूर्ख की ਜਿਉ ਰਾਮ ਰਾਮ ਹਰ ਜਿਉ ਨਾਮ ਰਾਮ ਦੀਨ ਦਇਆਲ ਕਿਰਪਾਲ ਸੁਖ ਸਾਗਰ ਸਰਬ ਕਲਾ ਭਰਪੂਰੀ ਨੇ ਵੇਖਤ ਸੁਨਤ ਸਦਾ ਨਾਮ ਪੜ ਅੰਤ ਸੁਨਾਇਆ ਕਲ ਤਾਰਨ ਗੁਰ ਨਾਨਕ ਆਇਆ ਕਲ ਤਾਰਨ ਗੁਰ ਨਾਨਕ ਆਇਆ ਸੁਣੀ ਪੁਕਾਰ ਦਾਤਾਰ ਗਾਵੇ ਗੁਰ ਨਾਨਕ ਜਪ ਨਾਨਕ ਆਇਆ ਕਲ ਤਾਰਨ ਗੁਰ ਨਾਨਕ ਆਇਆ ਕਲ ਤਾਰਨ ਗੁਰ ਕਲ ਤਾਰਨ ਗੁਰ ਕਲ ਤਾਰਨ ਗੁਰ ਨਾਨਕ ਆਇਆ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
ਬੋਲੇ ਸੋ ਨਿਹਾਲ।
ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। Good evening to all of your good selves who have made time out from your busy diaries to help us together celebrate within the UK Parliament Guru Nanak Dev Ji's Gurpurb. I think for those of us who are Sikh, we know the essence of the faith of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, the founder of Sikhism, and the three pillars to his religion. Naam Japna, so meditating upon the one, Kirt Karni, working hard and earning an honest living, and Vand Ke Shakna, sharing with others. I think those qualities inherent within the faith, that is why we have adherents to the faith who have such a strong work ethic. Everybody knows that they need to work hard. That is the path laid out by Guru Nanak Dev Ji, and they must share with others. And I think if we look upon the teachings of the Guru about how we have Sarbat da Pala, working for the betterment of all, regardless of background or gender or color or creed. And if we are to talk about gender, let's not forget it was Guru Nanak Dev Ji who centuries ago underlined the message of gender equality. So kyo manda akhiye jit jamme rajan. How can they be called inferior from whom are born great kings and rulers? And that's the message that I think as Sikhs they should be very proud of. And that is why whether somebody is a woman or a man, they are equal in the eyes of the Guru, and they should be equal within society. And I think if we look upon the message of love and why, I know in a world where hatred and division seems to be at the core for many individuals who are looking to divide community, Guru Nanak Dev Ji's message was one of love. Sach kaho sun leo sabeh, jin prem kiyo din hi prab payo. That hear you all, I speak the truth. Those who learn to love, they will attain the Lord. I think those are the core message and the core teachings of the Guru that we must hold within our heart. It's all very well getting together, having lots of selfies, getting together and having events and gatherings. That's brilliant. But the core message of any festival, of any event should be, and I think in terms of the Gurpurb, should be the teachings of the founder, Guru Nanak Dev Ji. And look, I also want to thank not only my friend and colleague Preet as the chair of the all-party parliamentary group for the British Sikhs, but I want to thank our partners for today's event, the Sikh Network, the Sikh Federation, our media partners, also in terms of Akaal channel. We've got Sukhdev Singh and the team here, Mr. Kuna and the team. They are omnipresent as always at such events. And I believe we also got Punjab 2000. They should be here somewhere because they take lots and lots of wonderful pictures. And I also want to thank in advance some of our performers for today, in particular Jaspreet Kaur, whose rendition you will be enjoying very, very shortly. And we will also be having awards to recognize those who have made an incredible, immense contribution, not only to Sikh community life, but the wider society. So that's what we have got to look forward to. Once again, on behalf of the all-party parliamentary group, I do want to outline some of the work that we do. We work on a cross-party basis. So whether somebody is Labour, Conservative, Lib Dem, one of my colleagues, Clive Efford, has just come in as I was talking about the cross-party working group. Colleagues work to make sure that issues affecting the Sikh community within the UK and further beyond, that we are doing our level best to address those issues for the community. We are very, very proud of the incredible work that you as activists do. So thank you for all of that. I am now, before I make any more mistakes, and we'll be handing over to our first speaker, and it is from the Sikh Network, Jazz Singh. Jazz, if you would be kind enough to say a few words. Thank you. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
जय ध्यान किश कर न जाना साध न जाना तेरी सब ते वड्डा सतगुरु नानक जिन कर राखी मेरी वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह. I think that talk from Maharaj's Bani is probably one of the most relevant ones, especially when we think about this year in particular. But the reason why a lot of us are here today, why we are active on Sikh issues, we stand up, we challenge oppression, we challenge tyranny, whether it's in this country, whether it's abroad. And if you do that, you have to do that with no fear. And if you really do with no fear, it's because you have Guru Sahib's guidance and hand and protection over you. Only then can you really deal with and challenge on Sikh issues. And I think we've been blessed with the seva that we've been granted, and many of my colleagues also. I think it's vitally important that we hold these events here in Parliament. The 6th year that we've been holding the Nanak Dev Ji Gurpurab here. Because it's important that we spread that message. Yes, some of the friendlier things, aspects of Sikhi, whether it's serving langar, whether it's helping the vulnerable, those things have tend to get the limelight. But actually, Sikhi is way more than that. And a lot of the speakers that we have today will touch on that. But in essence, it is about challenging states, rulers, governments, and holding them to account, holding them to the most powerful thing that is, and that's the truth. And that's ultimately what drives any Gursikh and any Sikh, is to strive for that truth and truthful living. So it's important that we hold these Gurpurab events, and I'm really pleased to see so many of you attend today, because we tend to get a very different Sangat at these events in Parliament than we typically do at Gurdwara events or conferences or conventions that are on Sikh issues. So it's really pleasing and warming for us to see such a diverse group, because the issues we're going to talk about, and you're going to hear from more qualified speakers throughout the program, are going to be on the same element, because Sikhi, it is what it is. It is the path and the journey for us all. And it's just when we choose to take part. That's the only question that we all need to decide and take away from here. So I'm not going to go on for too long. I just want to thank you all for coming. We do have a list of esteemed speakers from around the world today, and we'll go through the Kirtan as well. But just on behalf of the Sikh Network and the Sikh Federation, I just wanted to thank you all for coming. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you very much, Jai Singh. And I'm also very, very grateful. And we've also got the cousin of Jagtar Singh Jol. That's another issue, by the way, that us as parliamentarians have raised. We've discussed it within the all-party parliamentary group. We've also raised it on the floor of the House. Another issue that is very, very current, wherein I've recently discussed that with the Security Minister, Tom Tugendhat, as well, and we will be raising that within a meeting with the Security Minister of the all-party parliamentary group, are the very concerning, worrying news coming from Canada, the US, and indeed the alleged hit list of 20 individuals. And I know that 6 members of Parliament from the UK have constituents, including me. And all of that concern has been expressed to the government on those constituents' behalf, but on behalf of many other people who are worried about the safety and well-being of Sikh activists. Look, the freedom of expression, just like the freedom of belief, is an inherent, inalienable aspect of our democracy, and that must be preserved under all circumstances. Everybody, whether or not we agree with somebody's views, it does not mean that their views cannot be aired, and it certainly doesn't mean that individuals should be assassinated. And that is why when any such allegations or anything like that happens around the world, we raise it. And I know that my good friend Mohammed Yassin, Member of Parliament, he raised that on the floor of the House when he was fortunate enough to get a Prime Minister's question last week as well. And by the way, when some people will be thinking, I know it often comes up on social media or whatever, they'll ask their local Member of Parliament, like the Member of Parliament for Wolverhampton, Pat, why haven't you raised this issue? Why is that other MP raised it? It's because literally in Prime Minister's questions, there's only 15 people who are lucky enough, fortunate enough to be selected, just as for other departmental questions. But we are very, very fortunate that honourable members from across the House do raise Sikh issues, including at the Prime Minister's question time. I've got parliamentary speakers who very shortly I will be bringing in as well. But before that, I want to go to our first guest speaker, Mankamal Singh. For those of you who are involved in activism within the UK, he certainly needs no introduction. And so without further ado, if you would be kind enough to share your views on the Gurpurb before then I bring in other speakers. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I'm going to remain seated if that's okay. In paintings, imagery, iconography, Guru Nanak Dev Ji is depicted flowing robes, a thick white beard, a round turban, and often a holy hand held up in blessing. The popular representation presents the Guru as a figure of unassuming holiness. These imaginary paintings and elementary definitions collectively lead many of us into an invented understanding of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. Today, in the contemporary world, the push to present Guru Nanak as a sage preaching enlightenment has become far more prevalent than the actual philosophy of our Guru. But to truly understand the philosophy of the Guru, the Sikh continually turns to Gurbani to clear up the clutter of appropriation and artist impressions, misquotes, and imposed contexts from the past couple of centuries. When we read and embed Gurbani, we discover that Guru Nanak's way of life denotes a method for engagement with life, political, social, familial, and spiritual. That way of life delivers a governance model for Sikhs to follow. The philosophy in Gurbani, the Shabad, the dynamic word within Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, the living Guru, reveals that Guru Nanak Dev Ji was not some mystic engaged in outwardly symbolic practices. The message of Gurbani shows how Guru Nanak emerges as a revolutionary who turned the spiritual and political thought of the Indo region inside out. Guru Nanak's thought already embodied the spirit of the saint soldier, which solidified with the Khalsa 230 years later in 1699. Guru Nanak unveiled a Panth, which translates into path, and the Guru's path transcends spirituality. The word Panth appears 60 times within Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and sometimes we interpret Panth as community, group, or congregation. But for the Sikh, Guru Nanak's Panth is a statute for living with dignity, with rights, and with justice. The introduction of this statute begins with the digit 1 in Gurmukhi, followed by Oankar. Theologically, in the Abrahamic sense, one often refers to Ik Oankar to mean one God. But the use of the numeral 1 before Oankar in that preamble abolishes the notions of the other at the outset. The numeral 1 turns all social ranks based on faith, caste, class, gender, or race to be an illusion. Onkar is a single force running through the cosmos and beyond. You can call it God, Ram, Waheguru Allah, as per your belief, or you can call it universal intelligence or energy. It is this philosophy of Guru Nanak Dev Ji that underpinned the foundations of the Sikh network formed before the 2015 general elections to bring together a network of Sikh professionals and talent to reignite the flame of Sikh activism and to ensure engagement with political institutes is authentic and current on issues that impact British Sikhs. And that has been a much larger challenge than we ever imagined for a minority community like the Sikhs in Britain. We found out over time that the mold is set for a mute model minority fit, but this has never been the fit of Guru Nanak's philosophy. The past 12 months has been one of immense challenge for the Sikhs in Punjab and across the diaspora. Non-violent, democratic, and most importantly, the legal nature of contemporary Sikh activism has come across challenge, with even UK government-funded reports into extremism and faith engagement felt by the community to largely conflate, demonize, and frame British Sikh activists akin to criminals for engaging in political activities that are entirely legal under British law. And of course, the Sikh diaspora is now experiencing transnational repression, which has become massive following the farmers' protests and the Khalistan referendum ballot. The cold-blooded shooting of Hardeep Singh Nijjar in a Gurdwara car park in Canada in June, the sudden and suspicious death of Avtar Singh Khanda in UK, the much-publicized thwarted murder plots of Gurpatwant Singh Pannu in the US, as well as publicized hit lists, as Tan has just mentioned, social media trolling, abuse, and harassment are examples of the change in the landscape over the past few months.
Thank you very much. I was very, very grateful to Mankamal Singh ji because, as I mentioned before, we've got individuals who be explaining some of the theological aspects of Guru Ji, has been very eloquently explained by Mankamal Singh. We've also got the guest speakers, Pat McFadden, first of all, who needs to leave very soon. But Pat, if you would be kind enough, as the member for Wolverhampton South East and as a shadow cabinet member, to give the Labour Party perspective for today, being a front bencher, before I bring in other parliamentary colleagues.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Friends, it's a pleasure and an honor for me to be with you tonight to celebrate the Gurpurab of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. I've had the honor of representing Wolverhampton South East in the Midlands for many, many years now, 18 years and more. And we have a very big Sikh community there. It's a really important part of the city. And the community has taught me a great deal in my time as a member of Parliament. So it's a great pleasure to be here. I've hosted in Parliament the parliamentary celebration of Baisakhi for about 10 years now, I think. And it's something I'm very honored to do. And being an MP representing the big Sikh community, of course, like all MPs, you represent every part of your community, every faith, people of all faith and none. And I know that the community takes its issues very seriously and asks its MPs to speak up. One of the first things I did when the government reshuffle took place a few weeks ago was to write to the new Foreign Secretary and ask about the situation with Jagtar Singh Johal. He's not my constituent. He's very well represented by his own MP, the MP for Dumbarton. But I know that his case means a lot to the Sikh community throughout the UK. So that's something I did just a couple of weeks ago. I also know that the community is concerned that whatever opinions people have, they have a right to walk the streets in safety in whatever country in which they live. And that's something that I have said very clearly to the Home Office and the Foreign Office about people living here in the UK. And no one should have
fear that they are in danger because of the opinions that they hold. And that's a very important principle here in the United Kingdom. I want to thank the community for everything you do, all the hard work, all the community work, the putting into practice every day of the principles that Tanmanjit outlined at the beginning, because I see the reality of that in the community that I represent in Wolverhampton every day. So it's a great pleasure for me to be here with my colleagues from different political parties. I thank you very much for coming tonight. I hope you enjoy this visit to Parliament and giving all of us the chance to celebrate and mark this very special and auspicious Gurpurab. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you very much, Pat. And now, without further ado, I would now like to ask the former Immigration Minister and the Chair of the Women and Equality Select Committee, the very hardworking and experienced Member of Parliament from Southampton, Romsey, my good friend Caroline Notes, if she could share her views before I bring in Khalid Mahmood and Muhammad Yassin.
Thank you, Tan. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Look, good evening, everybody. It is now nearly 6 years since I became the Immigration Minister, and still, thank you, Tan, I cannot get away from the ghost of that. And the thing that I am very conscious of, look, that was an important job in government, but the job that I do now, as Chair of the Women and Equalities Committee, is, to me, far more important and far more significant. And we heard it earlier that the job of members of Parliament, particularly for select committees, is to scrutinise the government, to hold them to account, to check that they are doing what they should be doing. Sometimes, as a Conservative member of Parliament, that is not an easy job for me, but it is one that I am always proud to say I do without fear or favour, particularly without the favour. So look, my constituency, and Pat just spoke of how significant the Sikh community is in Wolverhampton and how large it is. Now look, in my constituency, it is small. However, the Sikh community is the single biggest ethnic grouping in my constituency. And when I was first elected in 2010, there was no Gurdwara in my constituency. There is now. And that, I have to say, is a testament to the strength of the community locally. Now look, as a former Immigration Minister, I have to say this. The issues at the border do not go away. And that is one of the roles that obviously all of us have to play as local constituency members, helping people when there are challenges. And I always do that most diligently. But as Chair of the Women and Equalities Committee, I think of the teachings of the Guru, particularly about equality, particularly about women. And that is so significant. It was a group of Sikh women who came to me probably 2 years ago now, explaining to me that, you know, from her kings are born. And it is such a significant and profound teaching that we must never forget. But I must hand over. I know there are a lot of MPs who want to speak this evening, and there is a full programme. But can I thank you for being here this evening and say what a pleasure it is to have you here in Parliament.
Thank you very much, Caroline. And you must have done something right. None of us got claps, but you did. That shows you just how eloquent you were with your words. But now, look, seriously, I'd now like to hand over to somebody who, like I said, has been serving the community for decades, long before the likes of myself came along. Since 2001, the next speaker, Khalid Mahmood, the Member of Parliament from Birmingham Perry Bar, has been serving his constituents, and he has served in various capacities as the Shadow Foreign Office Minister and much more besides. So he has a wealth of experience, along with, like Caroline, like Pat, championing Sikh community issues, and he has spoken up on umpteen occasions on the floor of the House on that. So can we please have Khalid Mahmood?
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. It's a great privilege to be here on the celebration of Guru Purab Ji. I think it's important for us, amongst all of the things that we do, is to recognize one real element, which is the speaking in Punjabi. We need to ensure that our future generations to be able to understand the scriptures, be a part of the faith, one of the key things that you have to remember is to be able to speak in the language. And that's key. I can speak in Punjabi as well as I can speak in English. So मैं चाहना है कि ऐसी साड़ी जितनी भी कम्युनिटी है, अगर ਅਸੀਂ कुछ काम करना, अगर ਤੁਸੀਂ अपने faith ਦੀ follow करनी, ਤੇ ਜਦ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਪ੍ਰਚਾਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਜ਼ਬਾਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੋਲਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ, ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ, ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹਦੀ ਸਮਝ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਠੀਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਊਗੀ, तो किस तरीके नाल उन्होंने अगे जाना और अगे तुहाडी जिहड़ी है पूरा फेथ जिहड़ा ओहदी समझ आना। साडे वास्ते यह है कि असीं अगर कुरान शरीफ पढ़ना तो सानू अरबिक च पढ़ना चाहिए, सो यू अंडरस्टैंड कि ओहदी स्पिरिट की है, गल की है, सोच की। सो आई थिंक ये गल्लां जिहड़ियां बड़ी जरूरी ने साडे वास्ते, इन्हां गल्लां वास्ते चलना चाहिए सने। मैं एक छोटी जी मजहब की सवाल गल शुरू की, मिसाल देना है कि गुरु साहब जी Mecca बैठे से थके से, so they decided to put their feet up and rest, and they lied down, and somebody came to them and said, "Oh no, you got the feet the wrong way. That's towards Mecca. You can't do that. It's नहीं कर सकते." उन्होंने कहा, भाई ठीक है, मैं नहीं करना, पर तू दस जिथे किथे खुदा नहीं है, मैं उथे पैर करा। सो ये सोचा, खुदा एक जगह नहीं होता। जो उन्होंने गुरु साहब जी की टीचिंग है वो किसी इकल्ले बंदे वास्ते नहीं, जी गल्लां आउटलाइन की मेरे दोस्त टैन सिंह जी ने, एंड आई एम वेरी हैप्पी कि असीं दोनों इकट्ठे बह के इन्हां इशूज़ ते काफ़ी गल्लां करते हैं, स्पेशली मजहब ते काफ़ी बह के असीं गल्लां करने हैं, क्योंकि ये गल्लां जरूरी ने साडे वास्ते। सोहो रोड गुरुद्वारा जिहड़ा मेरे इलाके च है, भाई साहब जी ने उत्थे मैं काफ़ी बह के, आई डोंट गो इन फॉर 10-20 मिनट्स, अगर मैं उत्थे जांदा हां तो मैनूं कम से कम 3-4 घंटे उत्थे बहना पैंदा, क्योंकि साडी गल्लां इस तरह रिवॉल्व होंदी रहिंदियां ऑन द फिलोसफी ऑफ व्हाट वी टॉक, असीं की गल्लां करने, किस तरह उन्होंने अगे लेके जाके करना, एंड ये गल्लां इंपॉर्टेंट। सो इस वास्ते असीं अपने जनरेशन आने वाले जिहड़े उन्होंने ठीक तरीके ते लाइए, पर जबान दे नाल करना पैंदा, जे साडी सोच जबान विच है तो करिए। सैकंड जिहड़ी गल कीती हुण जिहड़ी है असीं कर रहे हैं, कैनेडा जिहड़ी गल हुई है लिजार साहब दे नाल, वो ये है कि ये गल्लां हो रही हैं। मोदी जी सरकार सिर्फ कैनेडा च नहीं कर रही है, सिर्फ यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स नहीं कर रही है, वो इत्थे यूके च भी कर रही है, सानू पता है। साडी सरकार जिहड़ी है हाले वो गल्लां नहीं मान रही, ऑलरेडी Canada by anything. And all respect to the Prime Minister in Canada who's taken the issue up quite strongly. The Americans are now taking the issue up as well very strongly. We in the UK need to do that. Nizar Singh ji gal hui hai. I was the first person to raise that in Parliament here. Because if we allow the Modi government to continue to do that, then we will all suffer as a consequence. So it's really important for us to look at those issues and deal with them and how we move forward. I think, a lot of the great work, and particularly the ethos of work and seva is huge. And I think that's what stands the Sikh community above everybody else. That commitment to seva and the aid and support that has been given to Muslims in India under persecution from the Hindutva government is second to none. Their own commitment is second to none, and we should appreciate that. So ये गल्लां जिहड़ी है ना सारियां सारी याद रख के असीं अपना भाईचारा जिहड़ा है वो समय इकट्ठा रखना चाहिए। क्योंकि जदों असीं डिवाइड हो जाएंगे असीं पिक ऑफ हो जाएंगे। ताकत ये है कि मुट्ठी बंद चले तो थोड़ा इकट्ठा काम होगा। सो ये गल्लां मैं समझना कि साडे वास्ते बहुत जरूरी है। ते आखिर ते मैं टाइम बहुत ले रहा मैं पता काफी और बंदे स्पीकर हैं। आखिर ते बाबा फरीद एक छोटा जिहा बोल है उन्होंने दसना है, खत्म करना होंदे। ढा दे मंदिर, ढा दे मस्जिद, ताकि हर एक जो चीज रहंदी एक बंदियां दा दिल ना टावी कि सोना रब दिलां विच रहिंदा।
As I often say with Khalid and Mohammed, by the way, our next speaker, we're often sitting there discussing issues to do with the wider Asian community, but in particular whether it's the Sikh community or the Punjabi community on both sides of the border, often in Punjabi. But now I'd like to ask somebody who is a very, very dear friend of mine. The last 6.5 years he's been serving as the Member of Parliament for Bedford and Kempston. If we can please have Muhammad Yassin, please.
Yeah, thank you, Ten. Waheguru Ji Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Fateh. Thank you so much for inviting me here today. In these days, I'm spending more time with Sikh community than anybody else. Because last Sunday, I was in Guru Nanak Gurdwara, and week before, I was in Guru Gobind Singh Gurdwara. So they raised the issue of Sikh community, what happened in Canada and America. So lucky, I was very lucky that I had a PMQ that week. And as Tan explained, that we only get 1 or 2 PMQs in a year. So I was very lucky to have PMQ, and it was quite fitting that they raised the issue with me, and I managed to speak up in the parliament. I got large Sikh community, but it's not about the numbers. I try to speak up for everybody, whether they're Sikh or Muslims or Hindu or Christian, but wherever there's injustice, I try my best to speak up for those people. I was in Canada a few weeks ago, and everybody, wherever I went, I was in Toronto, I was in Ottawa, wherever I went, they were talking about Hardeep Singh Nijjar. They raised the issue with us, and we raised the issue with them. Obviously, we asked them what happened there, and they were telling us their stories. And even when the Prime Minister came out, Prime Minister of Canada, and blamed Indian government, I don't think there's any doubt left who's behind the killing. And same thing was happening in America recently. And the day I spoke in Parliament, the chap who was involved in this crime, he was charged. So it was a great opportunity for me to raise the issue of the Sikh community who are facing difficulties in Canada, America, and in this country, as Khaled mentioned. So I will keep doing it whenever I get my chance in Parliament. And before this, I have spoken about our friend who's Jagtar Singh Jaggi. I have spoken in Parliament. I raised the issue in Parliament as well, because I believe it's very, very unfair that you lock up somebody without any charge for years and years, and his young family is really struggling. I met his brother and family members here in Parliament, and they were really, obviously they are really worried, but it's really bad. It's, a democracy, which is the largest democracy in the world, they're locking somebody up without any charge, which is I think it's very, very unfair on their family and wider community. So in Bedford, we got great community. They always invite me for their events in Sikh Gurdwaras. If you haven't been to Bedford, please visit, because we got one of the most beautiful Guru Nanak Gurdwara in Bedford, which is purpose built, and it's huge. And I was lucky enough to be councillor of that ward, and we worked together. I know when they bought the land, I know when they raised the money, and I was there when they laid the stone, foundation stone for the Gurdwara. I was there as well as a councillor. We helped them to get the parking. There's a huge parking there. It's beautiful Gurdwara. So please welcome, all of you, welcome to that Gurdwara, or Guru Gobind Singh Gurdwara there as well. So as a community, we work together, we live together in love, peace, and harmony. And one more thing I can tell you about Bedford, that we speak more than 120 languages, and more than 100 different nationalities live in Bedford. So we are one of the most diverse towns in Europe after London. So you are all welcome to Bedford whenever you get the chance. And please let me know when you come, so I'll make sure that I'll come to the Gurdwara as well. But once again, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak at this very precious stage. And I promise you that wherever there's injustice with the Sikh community or any other community, I will speak up and raise the issue in Parliament. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Mankamal Singh, if you would be kind enough to introduce our next 2 speakers.
Thank you. So this international profile that we've got this year is something that was really unexpected, because it was very last minute. But we're really grateful that we've got 2 heavyweights in the Panthak community from Canada that travelled. They came yesterday, and they've come especially for this event. So Jaskaran Singh Sandhu and Harman Singh Kandola are both parts of the World Sikh Organization of Canada. It's an organization that goes back to 1984 and is the lead in Sikh advocacy in Canada, as well as has a sort of a profile and respect across the world. So Jaskaran is one of Canada's top political and Sikh community organizers with deep experience in public affairs and media relations, a successful campaigner across all levels of government and the political spectrum. Jaskaran brings a unique perspective to government, stakeholder, and media relations. A lawyer by training, both of them, he has served as the senior advisor to Brampton's Office of the Mayor, home to Canada's largest Sikh population, as the executive director of the World Sikh Organization of Canada, where he now serves as their national director for government relations, as a senior consultant at an international public affairs agency based out of Toronto. Jaskaran is also the co-founder of Bars, a digital news outlet of record for the global Sikh and Punjabi communities, which is often quoted by major mainstream media outlets around the world. And one thing I think we all appreciate about Bars is it's really made the Sikh voice coherent, not just in North America, but globally as well. So I'm going to ask Jaskaran to speak first, and then I'm going to ask Jaskaran to introduce Harman, because Harman hasn't written about himself. He's been a bit more modest.
Well, I don't think you wrote that. I mean, Jaskar, that's quite the pop.
Those are my words.
Yeah. So I'll hand over to Jaskaran.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. You know, there's a lot to digest over the last 2-3 months in particular, but the issues obviously go far longer than that. You know, I've had a lot of folks from media, both mainstream and Punjabi side, or ethnic media as it's sometimes called. I've had friends and family. I've had folks in government from around the world, quite frankly, as well as in Canada at all levels. You know, asked three very fundamental questions. Again, in light of what's been transpiring over the last few months. You know, the first one is, how deep does transnational repression go? How widespread is it as it concerns the Sikh community? Well, the second question I'm often asked is, why? Why is the Indian government targeting Sikhs in the diaspora? And in particular, Sikhs in the UK, US, and Canada, but we know it's far more than that. And then the last point, and this is going to be a challenging one to speak in this space as we have MPs here, but what should our leadership be doing? What should our politicians be doing? What should our MPs be doing? I know you don't have them here, but what should our MPPs, our provincial parliaments, our legislative assemblies, what should they be doing in light of the injustice that our people are facing? And in conjunction with that, what should our organizations be doing? What should our institutions be doing? And what should our people be doing? Our Sikh constituency in writings that have been mentioned throughout this evening across the world. And all this comes in light of, again, to that first question, how deep does transnational repression impact the Sikh community? I think when Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stood up in Canada's Parliament and revealed for the first time that Canadian intelligence believed that India was behind the assassination of Bhai Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Surrey, outside of the Guru Nanak Gurdwara, that shocked a lot of people. And I visibly remember where I was when I heard that news. And I was anticipating it. And as a newsman, sometimes we get scoops. Right? So I was anticipating. I was ready for it, and I was still shocked. I was absolutely shocked. And I wasn't shocked at the fact that India would assassinate a Sikh. that was not what surprised me. In fact, we had been reporting the moment it happened, the summer of this year, that sources had shared with us, as well as our knowledge of what's happening on the ground, that India was behind the assassination. What shocked me, it shocked many other Sikhs across Canada and I'm sure around the world, was that the Prime Minister would stand up in Parliament and make that statement. You know, for so long, it's felt that we fought foreign interference alone. That no one took us seriously when we would raise our concerns with decision makers, with media, with anyone else. And you know, to a certain extent, I blame them, but I don't blame them. Because it sounds kind of wild, right? It sounds really wild. India, a so-called democracy, would interfere arbitrarily and extrajudicially with the diaspora community in the West. Right? That sounds crazy. Like, I can understand someone who hears that for the first time, doesn't have a deep understanding of what's going on, would be kind of taken aback. Oh, here's another angry brown man with a conspiracy. Right? Neither dime a dozen. So that's step one. What happens next is obviously the back and forth, India claiming this is absurd, you know, the repercussions, the stripping or the threat of stripping immunity from 41 Canadian diplomats stationed in Delhi and other consulates in the country. I think Mumbai was one, Chandigarh was another one. There's one more that's slipping out of my mind. Canada be forced to pull back 41 diplomats arbitrarily, breaking every international norm, Vienna Conventions, the absurd disinformation that India started generating, not only about the Sikh community, not only about Bhai Hardeep Singh Nijjar, but Justin Trudeau. They claimed Justin Trudeau had cocaine in his plane, and Justin Trudeau's high, which is why he couldn't leave. And how crazy is that propaganda that I had people in Punjab who family with me call me and be like, "We heard about your prime minister." I'm like, like, you know, this is obviously disinformation, but like that's how deep it goes. That's how bizarre it is. You know, and Canada has the evidence. Okay, they have the evidence. And the interesting part of it is not the fact that they have it, that it goes way deeper than people know right now. But the next chapter of the story comes recently, when the US Justice Department, and God bless America, when the US Justice Department releases a sealed indictment. And the indictment is not just, oh, by the way, we have credible allegations to bring criminal charges against an Indian national for attempting to assassinate a US citizen on US soil. The indictment is far, far more detailed than that. So when we talk about how deep transnational repression goes, we can now say with very strong credibility that it goes as far as Indian intelligence working with criminal networks in diaspora countries to assassinate 6 citizens of those respective countries. It was criminal gangs that were hired to assassinate Bhai Hardeep Singh Nijjar. And yet to be seen, probably more individuals in Canada and elsewhere. And you read that indictment, and it's like, I don't know, what's a reference that you people understand? It was like a Mr. Bean-esque bumbling idiot trying to kill a Sikh, accidentally hiring a US agent, who then brings on another US agent to pretend to be a hitman to play India like a fiddle. So it's like, it's Mr. Bean without any of the, you know, charisma of Mr. Bean, and kind of rooting for him, right? You kind of root for Mr. Bean, even though he kind of confuses a lot of things. Gupta, Nikhil Gupta, though is not a lone actor. That's another thing. He's not a lone actor. This is not something that just happens in a vacuum. We know government officials are involved in India. Nikhil Gupta knew about assassinations that were going to happen in Canada. And he states a very important line in the indictment that's quoted from Mr. Gupta when he's speaking to what is a DEA agent of America. He says, Hardeep Singh Nijjar is only number 3 or 4 on the list. There's more that they're going to target. We have an educated guess of who they're targeting. They were Sikh activists of different forms, of different backgrounds. You know, we joke with friends that are active in the Sikh spaces. You know, we joke amongst one another. I wonder if we're on the list. Because we know the extent India is willing to go to silence Sikh dissent in the diaspora. And there's a reason for that, and I'll get to that. So when we're talking about transnational repression, it goes very deep. And I know there's examples from the UK as well. And you know, there was a recent article in The Guardian about it as well, by Avtar Singh Khanda. We all have a gut feeling of what happened there. As a newsman, wearing my newsman hat, I have a gut feeling of what happened there. Now, we'll obviously see as more and more comes out, how deep it goes. But it fits a recent pattern of a targeting of Sikhs abroad. And so, when I sit down and walk through and explain this with individuals, I get asked a follow-up question. Why is India targeting Sikhs? And my response on that is, you have this question twisted. Sikhs aren't doing anything to be targeted in this way. We haven't done anything illegal. No one's been charged for anything. CSIS is not monitoring any of these people. There's no files on these people. Bhai Hardeep Singh's crime was that he was an outspoken critic of the Indian state, and he was helping to organize a non-binding community referendum in Surrey. That was his crime. Now, India had spread disinformation around, well, you know, this Hardeep Singh Nijjar is running a terrorist camp in Mission, BC. I don't know how familiar you guys are with British Columbia. For some reason, a lot of Brits move there. So I'm assuming you all have family there. I don't blame you, it's beautiful. But the weather is very much like what it is today. Mission, BC does not have a Sikh terrorist training camp. This has been confirmed by RCMP. This has been confirmed by the mayor of Mission, and this was back in 2016. India, to this day, still reports that as a reason for why, wink, wink, they killed Hardeep Singh Nijjar. And then they show a video of a guy shooting guns in a forest, claiming it's Hardeep Singh Nijjar, but it's not even Hardeep Singh Nijjar, it's completely someone else. The question that should be asked is not why are Sikhs being targeted. The question should be, what is happening in India for them to act? What can we do to further scrutinize what is, quite frankly, a democratic backsliding in India, in a country that didn't have robust democratic institutions to begin with? What's going on in India, where almost 40 years after the 1984 Sikh genocide commenced, it wasn't a one-year event, but 40 years after it commenced, justice is still outstanding. Kamal Nath literally stood in an election yesterday or 2 days ago, which he lost, but he's still a standing member of the Congress Party of India. Where folks like Pulka is still advocating in court every day for justice of victims of the genocide. What's going on in India, where you have Human Rights Watch, you have Amnesty International, you have the likes of Reporters Without Borders, ringing alarm bells of the complete collapse of democratic institutions in that country. What's going on in India, where you have someone like Bhai Singh, and I know there's conflicting opinions on a lot of aspects of what of Amrapal Singh and his style and his tactics or whatever it may be. But what's going on in India, where they'll shut down internet for days on end, unleash tens of thousands of military and police force, arbitrarily arrest Sikhs that had nothing or even a remote connection to Amrapal Singh, throw them under colonial era, thank you, Britain, colonial era laws, hold them arbitrarily, indefinitely, without bail, and everyone just kind of forgets about it. What's going on in India, where you have a British national, someone from this country, detained for almost 6 years without a shred of evidence, held arbitrarily, again under colonial era laws, rotting away in jail, where his poor brother is going around this country, just recently coast to coast in Canada, educating folks on what's happening, and still only started kind of scratching the surface with general public awareness. The question shouldn't be, what are the Sikhs up to deserve this? The question should be, what are we witnessing in India under a far-right Hindu nationalist government? A Modi government that has no qualms about persecuting minorities, whose RSS Sangh Parivar's handbook literally is inspired by Hitler's Nazi Germany. I'm not even exaggerating or making this up. It's not one of those things where, hey, don't throw around comparisons to Hitler. They literally quote the guy. That's the question we should be asking when trying to understand why transnational repression is happening against the Sikh community. What they fear, what India fears, is Guru Nanak's message. And we had Mankamal Singh here raise some aspects of it. Mankamal Singh touched upon this already. You know, we kind of soften this image of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. Guru Nanak Dev Ji was a revolutionary. Let's not forget Guru Nanak Dev Ji and the place and time they're in. Let's not forget things like the Babur Bani. Let's not forget how Guru Nanak Dev Ji challenged the status quo of his time. Let's not forget the fact that Guru Nanak Dev Ji did not just concern himself on the spiritual condition of people. Guru Nanak Dev Ji concerned himself on the social and political condition of people. Guru Nanak Dev Ji didn't preach just an eternal journey, remote and removed from earthly existence. The unique thing about Sikhi is it doesn't create this duality between spiritual growth and political discourse and awareness. Thank you, sir. Loved your video, by the way, the question. Thank you. He also agrees with everything I have to say. Guru Nanak Dev Ji was a revolutionary. That's the message that worries the state forces of India. And this was true back in the 80s. It was true back in the Punjabi Suba movement before that. It was true back at the time of partition. And the betrayal by Nehru and the Congress establishment after that. We have to re-anchor ourselves to that reality. When we look at what is happening in the world right now, but we can, that's a macro level thing, because we can talk all day about various different issues. And Mankamal, you can pull my jacket if I'm going too long. I was told keynote, so I'm just running with it. Just do this. What's happening is not just, we can talk about at a global level, but if we want to zoom in, just like kind of what's going on with our community. This is a Sikh event at the end of the day. Do you think Guru Nanak Dev Ji would sit silently while these things were happening today? I'm not expecting an answer right now. Like, just chew on it, introspect on it, reflect on it. Go read Baba Rabani. Just read it once. I refreshed myself before coming up here. Would Guru Nanak Dev Ji remain silent about what is happening in India today? Would Guru Nanak Dev Ji remain silent about something like the RSS? Would Guru Nanak Dev Ji remain silent about the injustices that are being handed out by India's current regime? I don't think so. That's my opinion. I just don't, I just can't see it. So, this brings us to the final point. I'll wrap it up after this. And these guys are just like, oh, why do you invite this idiot? The final question we have to ask ourselves is, we're sitting on Parliament, and it's a great honor to sit in spaces like this. Don't get me wrong. And I think the jobs that MPs and councillors, as a man that tried to run for council and failed, trust me, I wish I was there. It's not to dismiss the challenges of these roles. And it's not to dismiss the power that these halls hold. But I do think we need to reflect on what we expect from our politicians and what we expect from our organizations and what we expect from our community, or just individuals. I think the mistake that happens in places like this, in buildings like this, even with the best of intentions, our representatives sometimes get caught in the game. Even people that come with Panthak soch, or come with a Sikh-inspired approach to politics, enter spaces like this and get sucked into the party politics vortex. It becomes, okay, guys outside of the community, organizations, advocacy organizations outside of the community, we understand what you're saying, but don't worry, we're working on it in the background. Let me maintain, let me play the game so I can become a minister, so become a cabinet member, so I can get a certain portfolio, so I can win trust in the inner circle. Because the system as it exists in party politics, and this is true in Canada and it's true in UK, it's the same system, is that party politics ends up being a very confining existence. The expectation is not on MPs to bring the voice of constituency into the Prime Minister's office. It's to take the message of the Prime Minister's office to your constituency. That's just how the system works. They call it a whip for a reason. It's not gentle tucker, right? It's a whip. Get in line and march. And a lot of politicians, including from our community, but it's not unique to our community, get into spaces like this and get sucked into the game. And my hope is for folks in politics, and this is coming from a person who's helped run campaigns, who was a big part of the 15, 17 Sikh MPs that joined the Liberal government, that has gained, again, way more weight than I'm willing to admit on campaigns, eating crappy pizzas, and has wasted way too much time on this. It's not always a success when we send folks to Parliament. And so this is coming from a place of love. It's not coming from a place of chastising. A lot of my friends are in farm politics. But it's an observation. And I wanted to be honest. I'm not flying all the way here to give you guys, everything's great speech. The other thing we have to be mindful of is that our politicians have to be ultra cautious in not becoming gatekeepers. It's where everything kind of starts falling apart. Don't be a gatekeeper that picks and chooses the voices that come from community. Be a consensus builder. Be a leader. Leader means leading. It means going into community and doing the effort and the hard work of figuring out what's going on so you can present a fair observations of where the community's mindset is. Because half the time, we're battling our own MPs. By own, I mean folks from our community. Be unapologetic. You're at Parliament Hill for a reason. If we're sending people from our community, representation matters, quite frankly, not good enough. We're way past that, way past that. We're 2-3 generations past that. It's time to have folks that are unapologetic, gutsy, and willing to speak from the community in places like this. And I'll tell you for a fact, there's MPs in other communities who do. For some reason, some communities, including the Sikh community, erase our own identity in halls like this. And self-censor. You know, I was talking to some folks today about censorship, because Boz has faced censorship in India. For reporting the truth, mind you. Funny enough, the High Commission of India followed us in Canada. So they're still reading our news. But it's not censorship that worries me. We're always going to be up against suppressive forces. That was true back in Guru Nanak Dev Ji's time, and it's true today. Nothing that hasn't changed. We'll continue fighting that. This is Kaljug. Let's be real. What worries me is the self-censorship. When we choose to just correct, or what we think is provide information that's palatable to folks who otherwise don't care about us or actually don't sincerely care one way or the other, or even at times don't like us. The self-censorship is what kills us. Now, the final point, I'm getting the tug on the jacket, and the pant, is that my hope is our politicians that are coming up against very difficult decisions, as India continues this transnational repression, as more news is going to come out. They're only looking at the tip of the iceberg. I mean that very sincerely. Even the US indictment is only still the tip. This thing goes deep, it goes very deep. That our politicians are up to the task. And my final ask is to organizations, like the one that you fine gentlemen are part of. Let's not succumb to the reality that plagues organizations often, the disease of sycophancy, of thinking access to power is enough. You know, someone once told me political capital's value is when you use it. So use the political capital you've garnered. Don't succumb to sycophancy. Don't play defense for MPs or politicians or institutions or governments that are dragging their feet on issues important to the Sikh community. But I'll end with this, and this time I really mean it. I'm really gonna end. I'm really gonna end. Like, I closed my book. I don't even know what I'm gonna say next. I'll end with this. The question I hope everyone walks out of here today is not necessarily, reading the news or talking about what's going on, what are current affairs. Those details are gonna change every day. That stuff is like this. It's gonna change every day. The one consistency in our life, a permanent consistency in our life, should be the aspiration to live a Guru-inspired life, to walk that path. And it's not, no one's asking for perfection. Look at me, I'm a Monna, come on. I'm walking down the path slowly. But at least with consistency, this guy's a Monna too, he's gonna talk after. Walk with the consistency of trying to live Guru-inspired life, where you play a role. And here, I know in my reality, it's in politics, it's in media relations, it's in public affairs. I try my best to adhere to a consistency of what I think Guru Nanak would expect of me in this position. And I hope that's true for everyone here, for organizations, for politicians, and for the Sangat that actually represents Guru, to keep everyone honest. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Our next speaker is our final, what I'd say, non-political speaker, because Martin Dr. Hughes is expected to. He's Turkey's MP, is Michael Pollack, barrister. He's a director for Justice Abroad. But how we became acquainted with Michael was
he came to us as a community when story broke in Canada and the issue of Avatar Singh Kanda. People started to talk. Oh, I'll be very honest, and this is one of the things I'd say to Scarlett. Ultimately, it's Maharaj. Maharaj will create situations. Whether it's Canada, whether it's America, whatever it is, it creates, it's meant to be. It's going to happen this way. So Michael came to us because, and I know even these sorts of things reach British intelligence. British intelligence officers started talking to people, not to Sikhs, but non-Sikhs, journalists, and they started talking about foul play. That came about because of Justin Trudeau. And Michael Pollack came to us, and I'm going to hand over to Michael to speak because he can talk about it himself. But the thing I would say that has really changed is for the last few days, you spend 2 or 3 hours a day talking to individual national journalists, talking about what is Palestine, why are Sikhs being targeted. And the focus at the moment is very much on the UK. I'm talking about national journalists here saying, why don't our politicians, why doesn't our government, why doesn't the opposition talk about it? And I can't let this go, but Vrinder Sharma was sitting behind me. He left quite soon after he started speaking. I think he had a phone call, but he's. But I'm going to hand over to Michael Pollack, who will talk about how he got involved with the Sikh community.
Benjit, thank you very much. It's great to see such a busy room here of people who really care about these issues. Benjit's right. I saw news about what happened to Avatar from the community. So tweet people are putting out there, which really shows the power of you speaking about things which affect you. And before I became a barrister, I was a paralegal on the Alexander Litvinenko inquest and inquiry. It started off as an inquest, and it turned into an inquiry. And lots of people, when these big cases happen, you forget the history of them. You know, the next case comes along. And one small piece of history from the Litvinenko inquest or inquiry, it became an inquiry because there was secret evidence that needed to be heard. You can't hear secret evidence in an inquest. And that's why it needed to become an inquiry. So the question was, would the government then establish an inquiry to look into the death of Alexander Litvinenko? The government then thought we were going to become best mates with Putin. That was our new business relationship. It was going to be huge in the United Kingdom. It was going to fix our economy. And they refused to do so. They refused to order an inquiry. I think that's one bit of the Litvinenko story that people forget. And it was only because Marina Litvinenko, Alexander's wife, very, very brave woman, she took them to court. She took them to the High Court. She forced that inquiry to take place. And it's only because of that that we know who assassinated him and why they did it. So it's a little bit of an interesting point there. The government of that time said, no, we're not going to order an inquiry. So she had to force them to do so. When I heard about Abdul's case, I just felt something doesn't feel quite right here. I reached out to his friends, his family, some of whom are here today, and my condolences are with them for his loss or for losing him from your community as well. He was a 35-year-old activist who sought asylum in this country. This is another kind of similarity with the Litvinenko case. When Litvinenko came to the United Kingdom, he took his son to the Tower of London to see the Crown Jewels, and he told his son, we're safe here. We're in Britain, we're safe here. It's a very similar story in many respects. He lived in Birmingham, he worked as a removalist there, and he started being targeted by the Indian press. And we all know how the Indian press operates in conjunction with the Indian government on these kind of issues. This increased, his targeting increased after the High Commission protest that you all know about, and his family was targeted back in India. Threats to his life appeared online. He received threats himself as well. And the Indian press published lists. And some of those lists had Mr. Nijar and Mr. Panam on them as well, as lists of people who were to be taken out, who were to be
NIA travelled to London in May in relation to the High Commission protests. Of course, we would like to know what was discussed in those meetings with our National Crime Agency and other agencies as well, because of what happened afterwards. He took ill and he was admitted to Sandwell General Hospital on the 11th of June. He died on the 15th of June, which is 3 days before Mr. Nija was assassinated in Canada. So when you look at the timing of these things, the suspicion starts to grow there. And now we know, we didn't know this before, that there was the attempt on Mr. Panham's life was supposed to take place around that same time. So it's a very short period of time that we're looking at. He was declared dead by the hospital staff on the 15th. The diagnosis was acute myeloid leukemia. You don't have to look very hard, or you don't need to be a medical expert to look at one of the causes of this disease. On the NHS website, it has poisoning as a potential cause of this disease. So whether they've got the diagnosis wrong or not, the potential cause is actually poisoning. The senior coroner, she relied on acute myeloid leukemia and said, well, because the doctor was saying this, it's not a suspicious death. But she also said she relied on the investigation of West Midlands police. And they told the press, we fully investigated this, it's not suspicious. But then more recently, after we told them, well, did anyone go and speak to his friends? Did anyone go to where he lives? Did anyone speak to his colleagues and work out who he'd spoken to the days before he was admitted to hospital? They said, well, actually, we didn't do a full investigation, and we still don't think it's suspicious. And that's quite something for a police force to lie to the press. And you've got that set out in the most recent Guardian article. You can go and find that, you can share that with your political representatives. They lied to the press. They said at first, we carried out a full investigation, and they backtracked from it. And the press, they like to talk about these things and say, well, it's a backtracking. And I think calling something a backtracking lets people off the hook a little bit, because a lie is a lie. And if you're telling people we did a full investigation, they say, well, actually, we did it afterwards. You haven't told the truth the first time. And now we know, quite recently, the West Midlands police have been put under special measures. So, for failing to investigate crimes. So it all kind of makes sense in relation to whether they did a proper job or not. So the coroners relied on the hospital diagnosis and the West Midlands police investigation, if I may put it like that, and said that there's no suspicion that the cause of death was unnatural. There was no inquiry or inquest into the death, which is very worrying. We say that a proper investigation is needed, potentially by a different police force than West Midlands Police. I, for one, would not have faith in them carrying out an investigation, given what they've told the press and then backtracked or lied about. So a proper investigation is needed by an independent police force to look into what happened. A proper investigation is needed to cover why raw agents from the United Kingdom were expelled. They weren't just expelled for fun by our government here, who is building relationships with India. There must be a reason. There must be a reason. Why were they expelled from this jurisdiction? And this has been reported to the police this week. A proper investigation is needed because of everything which is happening in the Sikh community around the world. And this is where you all are so important here, because I'm happy to meet with any politician or anyone else you think might be helpful to push this matter forward. I'm happy to do so. I live in central London. I can come down here quickly. I'll meet them in their office. They can come to me. So if you are worried about what happened after our sin, you reach out to your local representatives, councillors, MPs, and tell them, meet with Michael, I'll speak to them, I'll run through everything with them, just so everyone knows what's going on in this particular case. So it's very important to speak to your political representatives. It's very important to speak to the press as well and keep people speaking about this. Because with all of your help, we can push this forward so there's a proper inquiry into his death. So I would call on you to do that. You can put me forward and say, the family's barrister is willing to speak to you, and we really need your help as well. So thank you very much for being here. It's a very important case. We know what happens when we let political leaders persecute people around the world. What happened with Vladimir Putin when he was allowed to persecute and assassinate activists and opposition figures all around the world they just become stronger. So we really need to stand up for this and do it now. Thank you very much.
Celebration, inspiration, recognition. Clearly, we're here to celebrate Guru Nanak and to take inspiration from his teaching. And I'll say three words from what I've heard today from speakers. Quality is the one word you always associate with teaching Guru Nanak. But the other two words, which I think we should reflect on, is the word truth, speaking truth, living truth. And finally, one of the things that Scotland said is if Guru Nanak Ji was with us today, and we're seeing what is happening around us, is do we, as believers in Guru Nanak Ji, challenge that other word, take inspiration from. We're going to move on to recognition. Before that, I'd like to invite Catherine to say a few words.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me this evening. And I know that I've missed some colleagues, but I'm hoping that Gil and that Preet and Tan made it. And also, I don't know if Pat did, but I know that he would have liked to have, as would a number of other colleagues across the House, because the appreciation of the Sikh contribution is not just in the Labour Party, but across party. I bring warm wishes from David Lammy, my boss, and also from Keir Starmer, and also to say what fantastic representatives there are from the Sikh community in Parliament. So I've learnt an awful lot from working closely with Preet when she was the Shadow Development Secretary, and her work that she did going to Afghanistan and highlighting the position of women was an incredible learning for myself as she came back and told me what terrible suffering there was there in Afghanistan. I know that she and David did an enormous amount to highlight the importance of equality and to highlight the importance of lessons that we need to learn to be active and to care about the international picture. I know that there are a number of people, and I know that Jagtar's family is here, and I want to put on record that I've responded on behalf of the Labour Party, and before me, there were others as well from the front bench on the Shadow Foreign team to ask the questions, to hold the government to account. And we've also had meetings in lockdown with family members on the screen, and I've also managed to reach across as well to other parties, for example, the Scottish National Party, who have also been very active on this question. And we continue to raise that. Mr. Jaishankar was in London 2 weeks ago, and Mr. Lammy was able to raise the case in the one-to-one that he had. It wasn't actually a one-to-one because I was there, and so was the High Commissioner, so it was more than a one-to-one, but it was at the top of the agenda. And we know that one is just as important as a number of cases, and this has come to symbolize something bigger than just one family in a lot of pain and feeling very, very upset. And we will continue to ask questions, to work across parties, to work with the constituency MP, and to get answers. The other contribution I wanted to make was on the wider manifesto process. We're going into an election year, and I know in previous election periods, the Sikh community has written to all the major parties. And I'm looking forward to hearing from the network, as well as from Sikhs who may not be as involved in the network, who may not have time to come into the House of Commons, but who can send an email, who can phone their MP. Please advise people to get in touch with their MPs, give them a call, go and see them at their advice surgeries and say there are specifics that they would like raised, and I would be very happy to raise them. Finally, on the Canada question, no, we've got colleagues here from Canada, and welcome to the House of Commons. And just to say that myself and Stephen Doherty, who covers Canada for the Shadow Foreign Brief, we had a sit down with the High Commissioner for Canada last week in the Commons and went through with how establish from you pressure to get a ramp down so we can start getting things, at least for ordinary people, things like visas, passports, all the basics that we need to get a ramp down on some of this, because I know that there's a lot of detailed business between both sides that needs to be done, and we're an ally. We are mates, as it were, with Canada, so we want to support you in that. And certainly both David Lammy, Stephen Doherty, were on it. So to conclude, thank you for coming into the Commons. Thank you for all you do day to day. Thank you for your spirituality, and I really love the music. Huge thank you to our musicians. Beautiful music, really loved it. And I have a little bit in my constituency as well, so sometimes I get invited to musical nights, but it was really lovely tonight and a wonderful way to end a very long day in Parliament. We started at 9 this morning, coming up to a 12-hour day. And thank you for all the work that you do for the network and to highlight the very important concerns that need to be addressed. Thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Unfortunately, yes, very much like Jaskarn. He told me he was going to give a rah-rah speech. He said he was going to be very calm and collected, but I think passion is definitely one of his strong points. You know, in Canada, obviously, the World Sikh Organization of Canada, very much like the Sikh Federation, the UK here, and Sikh Network, we host events in Parliament, and you know, in recent weeks we had our parliamentary dinner with MPs from across party lines, and we were very happy and honored to host Gurpreet Jal to share the story of Jagtar Singh Jal with a Canadian audience, with Canadian MPs, to help inform them about the struggles of an actual British national who's being held without charge. But somebody, you know, and again, I'm going to correct Jaskarn, not somebody who's rotting away. Somebody who has remained in Chardikala. And when you heard Gurpreet Jal address Canadian Sangat across the country, you know, the one thing that he talked about was that from a Dunyavi Pak, there is nobody that is in a worse position than that family. But from a Dharmic perspective, no family has been more blessed, because this was a seva that has been bakshed to that family and that parvar, and they took it like that. And I think when we think about that defiance, that message that Gurpreet Jal had conveyed to the Canadian Sangat is something that we need to remember. Years and years ago, the World Sikh Organization of Canada was honored to host Shaheed Jaswant Singh Kalra. And he went and he addressed our parliamentary dinner many, many years ago. And on that tour, he had addressed the Sangat at a Gurdwara, Dixie Gurdwara in Brampton, where he made his famous speech. Made his famous speech about challenging the darkness, about being that light, being that light that helped to dispel the darkness around us, to spread that message of Guru Nanak. And I think, you know, when we look at when the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, stood up in the House of Commons and he finally acknowledged what we all knew to be true, there was relief in the community. There was vindication that finally what we have known, what we have said, what we have put on the record was being acknowledged. And we understood that to be true. And a lot of the aftermath of that was, well, how does the community feel? You're being attacked, you're under surveillance, there's interference happening in your country by a foreign power that is challenging the sovereignty of your nation. A Canadian was killed in Canadian territory by a foreign power. What is your message? How do you feel? And I think the Canadian Sikh community and the Canadian Sangat has always shown defiance. The day that he was assassinated, the day of his Shahidi, by Hardeep Singh Nijjar, stood up in his Gurukar and he gave a message, said, I was warned, I know my life is in danger. I know I'm on a hit list, and if that happens, it happens. But I will never stop from speaking the truth. I will never stop from living the truth. And I think it's a very important message. Last night, we were very honored to be hosted at the Punjab restaurant. surrounded by history, surrounded with so much inspiration from the Sikh community. In particular, we look at someone like Shaheed Udham Singh, the sacrifice he made. But I think back to a Canadian Shaheed, the first ever Canadian Shaheed, 30 years before Udham Singh, by Meva Singh Lopoke. By Meva Singh Lopoke was a Granthi and a Gurukar in 1910 in Canada, at a time when there was informants and the Gadaris. The Gadaris who were fighting against British imperialism, were fighting against oppression, and were fighting for freedom. And on the other side, informants working for the British government under General Hopkinson, an agent from British India who spoke Punjabi and controlled these agents. Hopkinson coordinated an attack and an assassination in a Gurukar, killed Bagh Singh through Bela Singh. Bela Singh's put on trial. And in order to get his informant off, they started to put pressure on Meva Singh Lopoke, who was just a Granthi. He had witnessed the desecration of a Gurukar. He had witnessed the assassination of an innocent Sikh, and he was being told to give false testimony. He was being pressured to give false evidence, and he had a struggle, because as a good Sikh, he didn't know what to do. He understood what his duty was. And ultimately, on the day of trial of Bela Singh, by Meva Singh Lopoke went and killed and assassinated General Hopkinson. And when he was put on trial for that murder, he said, "I've killed him, I will die for my crime." And he never called witness, he never called a defense, he never called any evidence to defend himself. But in his speech, what did he say? Why did he do this? Because ultimately for a Sikh, the highest form of living is truth. And he said very specifically, "I do this for my own community, but I do this for this country," which was Canada. If it is to stand for anything, if it is to stand for justice and for righteousness, then it must mean something. And for that, Hopkinson had to die. And my message to the Sangat in England and Britain is that we need to continue to display that defiance. We need to continue to remember the message of our shaheeds and honor their shahadat by looking to that message of living the truth. Thank you so much.
So many sevadars in our community. And when we talk to other organizations, we talk to many lawyers who are in the room, when we talk to other faiths, one thing that stands us apart from probably all of them is we do everything we do voluntarily. And we have a huge seva pillar in our community that underpins everything we do. And sometimes it's a constraint when we're trying to fight the UK government or other governments in legal battles to do everything on a volunteer basis. But ultimately, Maharaj always provides a route and a way. Whenever any initiative we've taken forward, we've always taken that to a conclusion, and that has been with the support of the Sangat. So as part of this section, we did want to recognize a number of individuals who contribute on a daily basis on our unsung heroes or who have done something to raise the profile of Sikhs. Our first award is Contribution to Politics. And here, the recipient of this year's award, I'll just ask my co-colleague Manchanda to just join us there in the middle, is a long-standing member of parliament. He's been representing British politics since the 80s, held a number of roles in government, including Foreign Office Minister Chair, Chair of the Public Accounts Committee, and also Chair of the Conservative Party. He is known to speak up for matters that are close to his heart, especially those in the face of adversity that have made him not only a big name in his party, but also across the benches. It's difficult, and we're seeing this more and more in the politics of today, for an individual to stand up for what's right and challenge the government. It's even rarer when the government is his own party. So the recipient of Contribution to Politics is David Davis MP, because what he's demonstrated, particularly not only just this year, but since Jagtar Singh Johal's detention, we all know what Preet Tan and particularly Martin Dr. Hughes has been doing, but raising issues with the government of the day is vitally important, and we're pleased that David has been championing Jagtar's case, but also working with Reprieve, who are also in the room today who are leading the advocacy on Jaggi's case and supporting petitions, early day motions, and speaking in Parliament. So I'm going to ask Catherine if she would come and receive this award on David's behalf. David unfortunately sent his apologies, couldn't make it today, but I'll call on Catherine to come and receive the award. So thank you.
So, in the interest of time, I'm gonna read and try to stay on track as much as I can. But our next award is for contribution to sports. Trailblazer, role model, and an inspiration are just some of the terms used to describe our next award winner. She's one of only a handful of South Asian women playing football in the top 3 tiers in the country. Her passion for the sport and desire to provide more young women from diverse backgrounds with a route into the game have honed her career not just as a footballer, but also a coach to young girls. It is what has spurred her on at the toughest of times. This Derby County winger is inspiring a new generation of young female footballers in the UK. With every session, she helps young girls feel less marginalised in a sport where they are so far and few between. It is people like Kira Rai who continue to draw from their inner strength and break down barriers for the rest of our community, so those that follow in her footsteps can reap the benefits. Please join me in congratulating Kira Rai for her continuing contribution to sports.
So our next award is contribution to education. Now, education is very important, vital, not only for a minority community, but also for one who has its own distinct language. And when you're in a diaspora country, these things are important to protect not only your language, but your way of life. So this award goes to an organization that's developed a body of schools that are Sikh ethos, multi-faith schools. The schools positively nurture children of all faiths and those of no belief who collectively worship within specific faith groups in an innovative characteristic of schools as children learn from faith and not just about faith. The school project builds over 30 years of community remarkable self-reliance within an area of high unemployment, urban deprivement, and forging local community well-being and regeneration. So it's our pleasure to be thanking the Nishkan School Trust for their contribution for education that has benefited not only the Sikh community, but many other communities in the local area. Let's call Rupinder Kaur to please receive the award on behalf of Nishkan Education Trust.
Our next award is for contribution to business. This young man, in his early 20s, has been making waves in the business community for several years already. A fellow Gravesender, this now very successful entrepreneur joined the workforce at the tender age of 13. His entrepreneurial wit and dedication for a better future led him to establish his first company in construction at the age of 15. As his situation improved, his ambitions and priorities evolved. He is the founder of Vitanic Holdings Limited, a non-alcoholic beverage company based in Birmingham that acquired Lovely Drinks, an award-winning soft drinks company, in April 21. You may well be familiar with his recent efforts to buy English Football League club Morecambe Town and his successful takeover to ensure the survival of Rimstock, a historic British alloys wheel manufacturer. Whilst his aspirations continue to grow and his success reaches new heights, his love for his community has never wavered. Such that in September this year, he invested much needed cash into a media outlet very well known in many Sikh households the world over, and became the chairman of the Sikh channel. Please join me in congratulating Sarjot Singh John for his contribution to business.
Following in similar form, it's the youth of today that really keeps not only the elder generation alive, but also sends that message for the next generation. Our next award goes to contribution to media. And there are many professionals in the room who've played a huge part in not only representing Sikhs in the media, but also raising the stories and the issues of the Sikh community, which represent less than 1% in this country. So our award for contribution to media goes to a multimedia journalist who joined Sky News in 2001, straight after completing his A-levels. He has a deep interest and passion in representing underserved communities and underrepresented issues. His efforts were recognized by the British Sikh Awards in 2023, where he won Media Arts Culture Awareness Award. Before joining Sky, he served as a member of the UK Youth Parliament and represented his constituency in Slough for 5 years. During his time at Sky, he has covered several poignant events, including that had deep significance to the Sikh community, including the funeral of Bhai Avtar Singh Ji Khanda, the stifled investigation into Punjabi artist Sidhu Moosewala, and protests including Jagtar Singh Johal and the farmers' protest, as well as ongoing issues around Sikh hate. So it's with great pride that we call upon Amrit Singh Maan, the recipient for the Contribution to Media Award.
Our next award is for contribution to human rights. This team of ambitious and passionate individuals are creating awareness of the issues relating to Punjab. They use a range of different online mediums, seminars and think tanks to further engage in discussions around the plight of the state. This organisation uses research-based approach to identify significant issues within Punjab today and spur solutions for their resolution. They aim to implement both short-term and long-term strategies to aid Punjab and help our community rebuild the forgotten state into a thriving land that it once was. This group realised very early that while the issues surrounding Punjab are commonly known and discussed, the data providing evidence of such issues is not. As such, they felt it to be their moral obligation to the people of Punjab and those that trace their heritage back to the state to bring forth this data to the masses by educating and teaching our community. Punjab traces its heritage as a homeland to many, not just for those that physically live there, but also for a large proportion of the diaspora living around the world. The state is currently being overlooked by its government across a number of significant issues. And today, we commemorate Saving Punjab for their contribution to human rights and the work they are doing in supporting resolutions for drug and alcohol abuse in Punjab, and Punjab's depleting water resources.
Our next category is one of selfless seva, and this would apply to so many, but it's those that step above and beyond that we really want to recognize today. We've heard a lot about them, so I'm not going to go into a lot of their background, but we're delighted to have for the contribution to selfless seva is Bars News, and we have Jaskaran Singh Ji, who's flew in from Canada to receive this award, and Harman Singh as well. And anybody who's not following Bars News on social media, I please encourage you all on Twitter, on Instagram, to please follow Bars News. It's one probably the most trusted Sikh sources of news and information that's out there.
Our last three awards are to recognise various different organisations. And the first is for the recognised organisation founded in 2020 with the council, sorry, let me start again. Founded in 2020 with the council inaugurated on April 2023 to promote, encourage and empower, develop the legal profession and judiciary within the UK Sikh community. This organisation is the largest network of Sikh professionals in law enforcement to lawmakers, collectively working to further the association's aims and objectives of promoting, encouraging, empowering and developing the legal profession and judiciary within the UK Sikh community, and for forging alliances with other similar communities domestically and globally. This organisation works to raise the Sikh profile in the legal sphere and to ensure responsible and respectful coverage of the Sikh community, and to inform and educate its members and the wider community about relevant social, legal issues affecting the community. The organisation is based on core values of honesty, integrity, fairness and humility, which were exemplified when this group called a select committee to scrutinise the Bloom Review and deliver its findings at the House of Lords earlier this year, essentially exposing it for its lack of credibility. Today we celebrate Sikhs in Law as our 2023 recognised organisation.
So our penultimate award is for Recognised International Contribution. Now the award for international contribution, we celebrate an international leader who began his political career in 2008, where he ran and won his first seat representing an ethnically diverse riding in Montreal that he chose over a safe seat. In 2013, after mounting an exhaustive campaign, he won the Liberal Party leadership, capturing nearly 80% of the 100,000 plus votes cast. He prepared for the 2015 election with the same scrappy determination that brought him an unexpected underdog victory in a high-profile boxing match in 2012. Among his campaign promises was a pledge to appoint a gender-balanced cabinet, which he followed up on bringing 15 women into his 30-member cabinet. He called the Trump administration to account on several occasions when Trump signed an executive order in 2017 barring all refugees from seeking asylum in the US. Those fleeing persecution, terror, war, and Canadians, he offered that welcome regardless of their faith and diversity. So by name of his explosive announcement in the House of Commons on 18 September that we've heard about already, saying that there was credible allegations that the Indian agents were behind the assassination of Canadian Sikh Shaheed Deep Singh Nijjar. The Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, already cemented his position in international contributor on the world stage as someone who was not afraid to speak up for what is right, what was truthful, and it is for that reason that today we recognize the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, for his contribution to international affairs. And I would like to call Harman Singh to receive the award on behalf of Justin, and I'm sure he'll do his very best to make sure Justin Trudeau receives it.
Make sure to give Justin my best.
Our final award is a Lifetime Achievement Award. This year it goes to an individual who is known for spearheading one of the longest and most torturous legal crusades to gain justice for the victims of the 1984 anti-Sikh massacres and for fighting individual cases on the involvement of Congress leaders H.K.L. Bhagat, Sajjan Kumar and Jagdish Titler, despite the government cover-up. He has put the cause of justice for 1984 before his career and his family life. Born in Barnala district of Punjab, his education began in a small school in his village. He graduated from Ludhiana, and after completing his law degree in Chandigarh, he landed in Delhi to practice law. He served as member secretary of the Justice Narula Committee, formed in 1993, and was later appointed to the Council for Central Government in January 2001. He is known as a lawyer who won't take up any case if he finds that the client is in the wrong. In July 2017, after a brief stint in politics, he resigned as a leader of the opposition to fight the 1984 Sikh riot case in the Delhi High Court. And in January 2019, he left the Aam Aadmi Party altogether to dedicate his life to starting a movement against the atrocities committed during the 1984 anti-Sikh riots. He conceived and pursued the formation of the Citizens Justice Committee. The CJC served as an umbrella organisation for several human rights activists and legal luminaries. Floated in May 1985, the CJC has been pivotal in representing the 1984 anti-Sikh massacre victims before the various judicial commissions that have been formed for inquiry into the massacres. Today, we honour Harvinder Singh Fulka, commonly known as HS Fulka, a senior advocate of the Delhi High Court, human rights activist, author, and Padma Shri Award winner. In the words of Mr. Fulka, the fight for justice by the riot victims sent a message that the powerful and the mighty could be challenged and demolished. They were like a rock, and riot victims were like ants trying to push the rock. Over the years, with our efforts, we have been able to force the rock to roll, and now it rolls like a football the moment we come near it. If we stop in our efforts, it will again become stationary and grow into a mountain. I'd like to call upon Samarbrit Kaur, Councillor, to accept this award on behalf of HS Fulka.
I'm going to just finally conclude with a few words. I'm going to keep it very short because we have overrun. I'm trying to cover a brief session to thank everyone, but I'm actually going to thank the speakers on the left. The others have gone. So, Jaskan, Harman, Michael, Keith Nijata. This couldn't happen without all of you. So, every year we see new faces. Every year we recognise new personalities, new individuals. Governor didn't know she was picking up the award for Harvinder Singh Fulka. She herself, is in politics. She herself is a journalist. And when we see women, I think, progressing in such a way, then actually Guru Nanak Dev Ji's message is there in front of us. But I want to finish on one very simple and poignant point. A year ago, Bhav Singh Kanda came on to take an award for Shaheed Deep Singh. And he's not with us. And this is what we should remember, that we will all leave this earth. And what Guru Nanak Dev Ji taught us is to genuinely have a truthful living. So on that quite sad note, but also, if you heard the final words of Bhav Singh Kanda, he was in Chartikala. And we should always remain in Chartikala, whether it's Jagtar Singh Jor, whether it's Hardeep Singh Vij's family, whether it's others that he lost. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.